Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about taking responsibility as a lead. If you're wondering what I mean by lead, I have a whole video on game development roles. I'll link it below. And I even have a very specific video on roles if you're in the programming department, because a lot of the examples I'm going to give when I talk about this are going to be programming examples where I was or was not a lead programmer. I also have videos, if you're interested, there's also videos on how you might want to behave if you're a lead for the first time, and also the importance of being consistent if you're a lead. I'll link those videos below as well. I hope they help. Anyway, I see a big part of being a lead in anything, whether you're a lead programmer, a lead artist, or above that, like you're a game director. A big chunk of that is taking responsibility. And taking responsibility means you're the person in charge and you're making the decisions, but then when those decisions don't pan out, you have to take responsibility for them. Even if the reason they don't pan out isn't directly because of you. That's a big part of what being a lead is. And this is what I think any manager does or is supposed to do. The big question here is, where does this end? Let's say a programmer messes up on their job. Does the lead programmer take responsibility for that? Is it the game director? Is it the division director? Is it the CEO of the company? Where does it stop? And just to give you a reminder and an example, and this is something I've talked about here, when Fallout was about to ship, there was a bug, a crash bug, preventing it from shipping because it was just a random crash bug. I looked for the bug, took 2 weeks to find it. I looked for it with another programmer, and it was another programmer's bug, but I took the responsibility for it. Interestingly, I took the responsibility as lead programmer, but I wasn't the only lead programmer. So a lot of people said, well, you were also the project lead, the producer, so you should take responsibility for it. And I'm like, okay, but I had a boss too, and he had a boss. Why weren't they taking responsibility? Which, before I dive into all of that, I want to remind you that sometimes when I talk about this, and it's obviously a hierarchy, people are like, well, that's the problem. Everything should be flat. You should have a bunch of people, and they're all equal, and they're all equally responsible, and they all have equal authority, and you should just do that. We did that. Troika did that. They had a completely flat hierarchy for Arcanum. I have a whole video below on that, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of it. What I will say is it did not work. So sometimes when you guys tell me you have ideas, I try to be open-minded, but you don't actually have any experience. You just think it'll work. We actually tried to put that into practice, and it didn't work. Now, maybe we mess it up, and you guys would do it flawlessly, but in my experience, it didn't work. And one of the reasons it didn't work was there was a problem of who steps up when something goes wrong. Because let me tell you, in programming, when something goes wrong, more time is spent looking for the cause of the bug than actually fixing it. A lot of times when you find a bug, the cause is simple. You used a less than equal instead of a less than. Or you assumed that array was sorted when you grabbed its first element or its last element, and it hadn't been sorted yet. So literally, the fixes are changing that inequality or moving the grabbing from that array till after when it gets sorted. So the fix is easy. Sometimes it's one line. Sometimes it's one part of one line. But it's finding it, which is the hard part. If you agree with me, and I think it's just obvious, that a lead programmer can't find the root cause of every bug, that's the majority of the time, and that one person can't do it for the entire project, especially if there's 10, 15 programmers, that they have to assign someone to do that. In a flat hierarchy, who does that? Who makes that assignment? Who has that authority? You might think you know, but we tried it. And there was a lot of issues. There were a lot of problems, and we didn't do it after that. What tends to happen in real life is when there's a problem, it tends to be knocked upstairs. It goes uphill through the hierarchy until someone takes responsibility for it and says, I will own that. I will figure out what's wrong, and then I will assign someone to fix it. By the way, when that person does it, all the people above them in the hierarchy breathe a sigh of relief because that thing was headed to them, and someone, before it got to them, someone said, no, I'll take care of it. So they're all sighing in relief. That person who said, I'll take care of it, then finds the cause and either fixes it themselves or gets the person who was responsible for that area of the code to fix it. Or if it was an art problem or a design problem, they get that person to fix it. It's fixed. In the best case, everybody's happy. The lead took responsibility. The problem got found and solved. Often, though, that same lead is then blamed. And I've talked about that here. And also, I have a whole video called The Blame Problem. Because people are often blamed for things. It wasn't their work that caused the problem. They're simply getting this problem fixed, and now they're blamed. And so that causes this weird issue. And that blame, by the way, can come from managers above you. Those same people who were relieved that it didn't flow up to them will now hold you responsible for any problems. Like if the bug cost time or money, you're now responsible. But sometimes I see it come from gamers or game reviewers later who hold you responsible for everything that's wrong in the game. So, I've been told I was responsible for bad writing and bad art and all that, which obviously I didn't do, but I'm the game director, so I get held responsible. And that's the problem with blame, is it's very inconsistent. It's part of the video I have called The Blame Problem talks about that. Because one of the things I say is, leaders need to be consistent in how they act, and I have a whole video about that. But it's weird to be blamed for a bug as a lead programmer in an environment where there's more than one lead programmer. But also, it's been weird that I've been blamed for bugs on games where I was a game director, and sometimes not the only one. And I'm like, well, how did that responsibility jump around the lead programmer? Or there's a feature in the game no one likes, and they blame a game director, even though there's a lead designer too. It's like, how did that bounce around that person? What makes this even more complicated is I've taken over on more than one project, on 2 different projects. I've taken over the role of lead programmer, even though I didn't get the credit for it. And when I say I've taken over what a lead programmer does, I did all the scheduling, the estimation of tasks, the scheduling of tasks, the assignment of them, tracking down bugs, doing code reviews, all the things that a lead programmer normally does, I did. But someone else could have the lead programmer credit was not given to me. And they were 2 different projects and for 2 wildly different reasons. But the reason I did that role is it was needed. Somebody had to do it. There was somebody who needed to do all those things, and nobody was doing it. So that's part of what I'm talking about here, is I view all of that as there's a need to take responsibility. There's a need to do things that need to be done. And I see a lot less of that these days. Everybody likes to point uphill or downhill, saying that's who's responsible. All managers are pointing at employees are pointing at the managers. Meanwhile, nothing's getting fixed. And part of it, I've heard people, I've talked to people about this. They don't want to get involved because while they're willing to fix the problem, because they're willing to fix it, they don't want to be turned around and then be blamed for any of the issues the problem caused. And I see that, and that's happened to me, where you're like, look, I'll step up. I will fix this. I didn't cause this, but I will fix it. But now you're going to blame me for it. And I've been doing this a long time. And before a lot of you jump in and go, yeah, the problem is always the people above, I've seen it at all levels. I've seen people point up. I've seen people point down. The big way I see people try to point up is I've had people go, look, just tell me what to do. Just assign me my tasks. And then when something wasn't done right, they either say, look, that wasn't the exact thing that was assigned to me. Or they say, hey, I didn't get proper support in what I was supposed to do. So they push it all uphill and go, none of this is my fault. Sometimes they were right to do it. Sometimes they're not. They were assigned something and given all the support they needed, and they just didn't come through. So there's just issues like that. Sometimes things should be pushed up the hill and sometimes they shouldn't. But what I want to end this with is something more positive, and it's I've talked about this before, and I'm going to bring it up again. I liked working with people and working for people who took responsibility, who didn't always point fingers at someone above them or below them, but just rolled up their sleeves and got things done. That was the best time in my career, is when I worked with and for people who did that. And all I can tell you is, and this is what I want to tell you to look for. Try to find people like that and try to be a person like that, and then stay at that place. That is the best advice I can give you. Because when everybody's working hard and taking responsibility and getting things done, I don't think you need any of that blame. You're just getting stuff done and trying to make the best game you can. And when more people take responsibility, then you get a much better game and far less finger pointing and blame assignment. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today.